Hey YouTube, in my last video when I was talking about Magic the Gathering, I mentioned that, I think I did, I promised that I'd be talking about something else that kind of, spins around, that plays a big part in the great nerd culture, which I kind of mentioned on my YouTube page that I'm into graphic novels, and I figured, well, show off some of your collection, tell them what you mean. And I just want to give a quick warning, though. I don't have any, like, superhero comics. I don't collect those. If you like collecting them, that's fine with me. It's just, personally, I like focusing on the more, literary-based graphic novels. The indie comics, as they say. So, let's get started. First things first, I guess one of the highlights of my collection, which was the first comic I ever got, which was one of the comics that got me into, well, it is the comic that got me into graphic novels, is Bone. This is the one-volume edition, the first printing. This comic, oh boy, I love this. It's huge. It was hard to kind of read in the sense that it was so big, it was difficult, it was lunky, but it's well worth it. It's a long, epic, Lord of the Rings-esque story that has these kind of lighthearted Saturday morning cartoon tones that don't, I mean, it mixes perfectly, like peanut butter and chocolate. It mixes like, epic storylines and, themes of war, just like the Lord of the Rings, but mixed with a kind of, Felix the Cat type of feel. I really enjoyed Bone. I love Jeff Smith's work. Right now he's working, he took 20 years on Bone. He spent 20 years working on the entire Bone series. It means it was rolling since before I was born. It finished in 2004. And he's working on penciling, I think, the Shazam comics now, or something like that, something like The Flash or Shazam, and I really wish he would come back and do the industry one last great favor and spend the next half of his life working on another great series like Bone. Before I dive way into the indie scene, I figure I'll talk about some of the stuff that's kind of mainstream, kind of indie. Stuff like the serialized trade paperbacks of which I collect of 100 Bullets. 100 Bullets, just hear me out. I think it's a rich man's Sin City, and what I mean by when I say that is that I found that Sin City, personally, I thought was, people rave about it. I thought, the writing was blah, and the artwork was blah. Actually, I have a lot of mean words for Sin City, but I won't share them because I know that a lot of people are fans of Sin City. Either way, I think this is better. I think it has all the gritty noir type, genre. It's a gritty noir comic that also has a bonus. It has, James Bond-esque, X-Files-like conspiracy themes in it, which I think really make it a better comic. But, everyone's got their opinion. Something else that's kind of similar to that is the Neil Gaiman's Sandman library, which I'm currently collecting. I've only got up to issue 5, A Game of You. But the only thing I can say that I really don't like about Neil Gaiman's work in this is that sometimes I think that the concepts are a little rushed. Sometimes I think the dialogue's a little weird. Kind of like almost like he's an Alan Moore in the works. Anyway, but also I find that sometimes the storylines are extremely confusing in the sense that in the Sandman universe, anything can freaking happen, which often leads me to thinking, wait, what's going on? Especially, now that I've just started A Game of You, the number 5 in the serial. But, talk about Will Eisner's work. Will Eisner was like one of the first to pioneer the graphic novel as an art. I collected a lot of his short stories here, like Life on Another Planet, which was really kind of a commentary on, like, Nixon paranoia, 1960s Nixon paranoia, which, I mean, I truly enjoyed. It was a noble concept. You can find it on Amazon or, eBay or something. This one's The Building, and The Building, another noble concept about a bunch of ghosts that lived in an apartment that, in their lifetime, lived in an apartment building that's not complex, it's not going to get torn down, and they all come to see it get torn down in the afterlife, which is interesting. Last Day in Vietnam, you can pretty much, it's not really about anything, it's just kind of a, what's the word, to show off his artwork that he did during the war, inspired by the war. Anyway, check that out. And of course, his Contract with God trilogy. This is the hardback edition. I guess this is like the second great graphic novel I ever read, and I really enjoyed it. He's basically the comic version of Steinbeck. He's a, cutting realist who really makes you think about the time period, about 1930s. I really respect the man. God rest his soul. Moving on to another great realist in the industry who, I guess, was the height of all comics sort of recognized. He's not really recognized, but he did win a Pulitzer Prize for this. Mouse. I have the box edition here, and Mouse, boy, won a Pulitzer Prize. It's a concentration camp story about his father who did survive going to Auschwitz, Vladek Spiegelman. Anyway, it has the, I have the two books here, My Father Bleeds History and Here My Troubles Began. This really is a tale of humanity. Anyone who's really into indie comics must have read this. I mean, that's almost like a rule now. Something else that he worked on, though, Art Spiegelman, the author of that, he also worked on a comic chronology, anthology magazine called Raw, a literary, magazine of comics, and he worked on that for a few years. Interesting kind of side note that I didn't recognize until later was that the first comics in the first kind of short story here in the first episode of this magazine is called Teen Plague, which is about it's kind of like a metaphor for the spread of venereal diseases, I think especially syphilis, in a 1950s sexually charged but sexually uneducated culture. And he took that, really, and he made it a metaphor for that by saying that these kids were passing around a kind of space plague that was passed, sexually. And he took that concept and he rewired it to kind of reflect his, his childhood, or how he grew up in the 70s and the drug culture, and he applied that to Black Hole. This is another hardback edition, and it's really about basically the same concept as Teen Plague, but it's longer. It explores, more themes of, basically the old high school rhetoric of, I'm the I'm the nerd, he's the jock, and I want her who loves the jock, that whole shtick. But really, it's a good little, stone along the, or it's a good little tree to see along the way. So I like it. It's in my collection. Oops. Let's see what we got. Got to reapply the cover here. I hate covers on books. It's hard to screw them. Something else that's kind of the same deal, which these two really applied to my life. I'm not going to tell you how. I'm just going to say that I cherish these books because they really talked about themes that were, in my life, and they helped me through, helped me to get clarity on things that have happened to me. Is Craig Thompson's Blankets, which was about basically the man, I think it's a true story, his first real romantic interest, and it's a brilliant love story. It's very much like what's that one? To Kill a Mockingbird, but without all the a talk of justice and segregation. Something very similar. David B's Epileptic. This is also kind of interesting. It talks about David B., this French artist who grew up with his brother, who I imagine is either dead or still... No, I think he did die, but when he was alive had a lot of problems because he was epileptic, and he had some, social anxiety and other mental disorders, which, well, anyway, I'm not going to tell you how they apply to my life. But either way, both these books are really near and dear to me. They talk a lot about, things that have touched me. And I guess, kind of to finish it all off, let's talk about one man that I really respect, is Alan Moore. Alan Moore's work, I think, is always pretty much brilliant. The man is wields a silver pen. I've collected some stuff that he did with short stories, like A Small Killing with Oscar Zarote as the artist. This was very good, very interesting commentary about how we betray our true selves. When we grow up, we betray what we thought we would be when we were young. Other stuff that he did, of course, his famous Watchmen, and V for Vendetta. I saw the film V for Vendetta. Some of the stuff that the Wachowski brothers wrote in for V, his dialogue, was very V-inspired, which is why I somewhat respected. But the truth is they took the whole story of V for Vendetta and they kind of made it politics for idiots so that everyone could enjoy it. Really wasn't proud of that. Anyway, these are just a few things that are in my collection. I kind of wanted to share that with you.